Hello, listener. It's your dynamic duo of creativity and co-hosts, Chris
and Rick.
Today on the show, we'll be talking to Mike Pell, one of my friends at Microsoft, and one of the reasons I love working at Microsoft. He is an absolute gem of a human being. Bold, insightful, uncompromising, Mike Pell is widely recognized as a world-class designer, prolific thought leader, and a true disruptor. Inventor of the PDF and stylized font menu, Mike Pell currently leads the Microsoft Garage in New York City, the company's global innovation program that inspires the world's most successful companies to leap forward quickly. An attractor of the city's brightest minds and bravest explorers, this unique facility, designed by Pell himself, enables a new kind of envisioning and rapid prototyping to turn promising ideas into realities every day. And on a personal note, I utilize them all the time. Pell's books are considered foundation text for the most influential storytellers and explorers. With his third book, Visualizing Business, available now, demonstrating how AI coupled with data visualization and spatial computing help us to see our most complex and dynamic businesses in an entirely new light.
Hello and welcome, Mike. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here on our show today.
Couldn't think of anything I would rather do.
Thank you. Such a generous response. And our first question for you is the same that we ask everyone. Where did your creative journey begin?
Well, I was a little kid, and at that time was an artist. And I loved drawing and painting and making things. And I would make, like Lincoln log creations and build models. And, I was a very hands-on kind of, makery artist. So it started when I was really young.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that journey from being that young kind of creator that I think that most of us were when we were kids? How did you foster that throughout early adulthood into a career?
Well, I was a talented artist when I was in high school. And my high school art teacher insisted that I go to RISD because she was from RISD. And so, of course, she was trying to get me to go there. And growing up in Pennsylvania, I said, no way, right? Like, I'm done with this snow and ice and gray skies. Like, I'm going out west. I'm moving to Tucson, Arizona, where it's sunny and, and I can enjoy myself. So I went to the University of Arizona to study fine art. When I got there, I realized in the very first class that my high school art teacher had not taught me a thing about technique or foundation. And so I realized immediately I was never going to make it in this class. I was never going to make it in this program. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take a programming class because I loved science fiction and technology. And I was sort of left brain, right brain, like very, I would say, logical in some ways and very creative. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try this programming. And I liked it. And I thought, wow, I could probably make more money doing this computer thing than I can in art anyway. So maybe I should stick with this. Sort of fast forward as I got done with school, started a software company, I was always able to use both parts, right? I was always a technologist and a designer through my whole career. And I think that that's sort of something that people miss. You don't have to pick one or the other. You can be both or all three things. I'm an entrepreneur. I love business. I love sales and marketing. There's lots of things I like to do. So I always tell people, it's not a matter of trying to stay an artist while you're doing other things. It's integrating that into what you're doing so that you never have to feel like you're choosing.
I love that statement, Mike, because it doesn't force you to stay in a lane that most people think you have to do, which is what a creative person does. So playing on that idea, being a creative person and pulling all these things together, like what are the things outside of your particular job or craft that motivate you, that help this journey go on for you creatively, the things you pull from and what motivates you from them?
But I'm just a collector. I love lots of things, right? I love music. I love science fiction, technology, stories. I love great storytelling. I have to say, I'm sorry, but I admit I love watching television. I love, reading magazines. Just like any creative person, I need stimulus, right? I need input. And so I guess the things that I do are those things that allow me to have that kind of input to help me, think about things differently.
Going on that idea of drawing inspiration from a wide variety of different inputs, I also love what you said about really not having to choose and being able to integrate multiple parts of yourselves or multiple interests. And I know that can be a struggle for a lot of people. Are there any maybe words of wisdom, or if you'd like to even share, how did you come across that idea of like integrating? Because I see that there's creativity in, say, programming, the same level of creativity and creation there as someone would be painting. But I think for a lot of people, they feel like such different, maybe parts of their brain or different muscles to exercise. And I'd love to hear about how you've kind of developed that for yourself.
I might be different in that I don't like being told that I'm only one thing, like stay in your box, don't draw outside the lines. That's not me. Like I've always been a rebel or maverick, like whatever you want to call it. I just don't do well when I'm told I need to stay in a box. So if I have to, I will make people think that I'm in the box, but I'm actually doing all those other things. I just do them. No one's going to be watching you every second of the day, like as if you can't do a sketch while you're coding, right? Like how many people that that are programmers have a guitar sitting next to them? Lots. There's a direct connection between music, creativity, mathematics, science. So I think it's really sort of reaching for those things while you're doing these other activities, whether it's writing. I write books. That's a form of creativity and expression for me. There's lots of people who love to be super athletic. They get up early, they go for a run, they like do whatever they do, but you sort of integrate all those other parts of yourself when you're doing your job. You just find a way to do it. And you don't allow yourself to fall into the trap of thinking that you can't, because you can.
This is why I love you. This is why you're one of my favorite people. Because I want to pull on that thread. So first, since I've known you, you remind me of, and I never get his name right, Kaku.
Yeah, he's been in the garage here in New York. He's like super cool guy. He's got the greatest hair ever. I mean,
Oh my God, yeah. If you listen to him talk, he always says Star Trek. Star Trek and Star Wars is what motivated him. And people are like, huh? Like that's fantasy. And he's like, yeah, but I wanted to make it right. See, you see where my
no,
brain.
I mean, I was, original series Star Trek, like Star Wars. Yeah, that's cool, but definitely a Trekkie. But no, that's what inspired me. That's why I love science fiction. I grew up in the era of Apollo and space travel, and I would draw pictures of Saturn V, and I would do all that stuff. I loved the Star Trek stories because they didn't seem like science fiction to me. They seemed completely plausible. Because maybe I joke often that I'm from the future. I've always had a lot of vision. And for me, that didn't seem like it was made up. It just seemed like an inevitability. And like, well, of course we're going to be doing that because it was sort of based on science fiction, right?
Yeah, which is why Star Trek to me is better than Star Wars. Star Wars is fantasy, which I love, don't get me wrong. But Star Trek is science fiction, science. It's based in something.
In politics and religion and
all the good
societal, stuff. All that stuff is all like baked in,
So playing on that, when this is the inspiration, this is, what drives you want to do it. How do you get past the hard parts? How do you get past the banging on your head? Using him as an example, but I've heard him say it, like he wanted to make transporters, and then when he got older he realized, oh, they made up this because it's not possible. But that didn't stop him. Like, how do you keep yourself going? How do you keep yourself motivated? How do you get through those hurdles?
Yeah, I developed a technique a long time ago for myself that I use now in the garage with everybody who will listen to me, which is when you say I'm trying to get from A to B as fast as possible. Most people think incrementally, sequentially, how would I get from A to B? I leap immediately to B. And I say, okay, we're in the future now, right? We have the most optimal possible outcome, the most impact, the best thing that we could ever imagine doing. We have that. And then I start to think with people or myself, how did I get there? What did I have to leap over? Like, what was that chasm that I had to cross at some point? Was it that the technology doesn't exist? We don't know how to do it. There's not enough people. We don't have any money, like whatever it is. But once you identify that, the impossible becomes possible because it's just a matter of solving something at that point. So for me, I guess I never let myself fall into the trap of being stuck. I just assume that we're going to find a way past that and just fast forward right to the end and try to start there.
That is super fascinating. And I love that framing. So just to reflect, what I'm hearing is, as opposed to thinking, well, how do I get A to B? You're saying, oh, we're at B. How did I get here? And then those steps are what you're following. In your mind, like, what do you think the big difference is between those two? Because it sounds like you're just, are you looking at it from front to back or from back to front? But I think there's something profoundly interesting and thoughtful in changing that frame. And I'd love to just hear what your thoughts on that are.
It's completely inside out. Linear thinking will never get you anywhere, is what I would say. There's no such thing as incremental innovation. There is no such thing. If you want to really truly innovate, you have to leap in some way. And so for me, starting at the end, starting at B, I've let go of all the constraints. I've ignored all the reasons, we've tried this 50 times before. You don't have enough money. Nobody knows how to do that. Oh, you're not good enough. Who cares? Like, I don't care. Like, I'm going straight to it actually works and it's done. And here we are. Okay. So now let's talk about, did we do the right thing for the customer? Did we do the right thing for us, society, communities? Figure all that part out. So for me, inverting the model is a complete and utter sort of, I would say, avoidance of incremental thinking. Just don't do it. For me, like, this is my technique. There's a lot of people who say, well, that's not realistic and you're never going to get there and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, don't care. I'm already there. We're going to figure out how close can we really get right now. And that's the other part of my work, is not only do I start from the end, I try to figure out how to get there as fast as possible. Right. And maybe I'll leave some steps out and maybe it won't be perfect, but you know what? We're going to get as close as we can to that to start. I guess a lot of times, especially in corporations or large companies, you'll have an idea and someone will immediately try to start poking holes in it and tearing it down because it's never worked before. It's not plausible. Oh, it's not realistic. If we continue on that way, we're never going to do anything interesting.
A lot of creative people have a problem fitting into a corporate environment, for lack of better way of saying it, because of what you're talking about, because the corporate environment does not allow that kind of innovation and that way to thought. And there's always, I see it all the time when I go to see customers, there's always the naysayer. No, our system doesn't work that way. No, this, no, like there's always the no, because corporate, the way I always like to say it, corporate does not appreciate, it's not the word I want, but does not recognize the power of creativity and how you, coming from entertainment, my whole career, the creative person who's not doesn't fit in the mold of corporate. So they don't understand the creative mind because you don't fit into that corporate square hole of, and that's the person who moves up.
Right. Part of that, I'll just say, part of that is your problem as the creative person, not understanding how to speak to.
This is where I was going. Thank
people.
You.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So there's an art to using your creativity in a way that's non-threatening and actually sort of somehow makes sense to them. I do this all the time, every day here in the Microsoft Garage, right? So we talk.
You're one of the masters of it.
Well, I mean, my technique is to just listen, honestly. I listen to what they say and I try to pick an idea that's exciting, that's going to get them somewhere, that has a true impact. And then I do my little, trick of going to the end. And there's the naysayers and all that. And I say, okay, look, we're going to figure out how this is going to happen. And we go through the whole process. And by the time we get to the end, they figured out that it's not actually impossible. It's just that there's some hard parts. And then they start to talk about, well, how could we get around the hard parts, or how can we avoid that? Or what else can we do? So I think once you show people that there is a logical progression to get from A to B, I use a different technique, but once they're comfortable, and if you learn as a creative person, as an artist, as a designer, as a musician, as a dancer, it doesn't matter. You're trying to help people understand where you're going, but you have to speak to them in their language. The mistake that many of us make is trying to get them to listen to the way that you want to describe it. And that's the fatal flaw, not knowing how to adapt your communication style to sort of meet them at the right altitude and make the connection so that you're talking the same language. At Microsoft many years ago, the creatives, the designers, taught the programmers how to do storyboards. Why did we do that? So that we could have a common language to talk about things, right? So it wasn't always a technical discussion. Even though some of the developers, were artists and they enjoyed that, many of them weren't. They never drew a picture like that in their life, and vice versa. There's very technical designers, but some of them just don't know programming, right? And so there was no common language. And once you figure that out, everything gets easier.
100%. What I'm hearing in the language that I've used with a lot of my clients is the idea of enrollment, right? It's getting, as opposed to convincing or kind of pushing your idea forward, it's getting enrollment in a shared vision. And so they can see their place in this future that you are describing and kind of bringing them along with. And I agree that is,
by the way, and the best of all is when you communicate at the right level, so you get to the same place, but then you use the Jedi mind trick and you make them think it was their idea.
I love that. And I think there's a lot of creatives who struggle with this, right? Who struggle with whether it's ego or whether it's just a lack of understanding or skill, because I think when you're trying to talk to someone in a different discipline, maybe, so say like a designer talking to a back engineer, right? Or vice versa, or a UI UX designer trying to speak to a business executive, right? I think what is required is also some knowledge of the other person's discipline in order to be able to speak to that language. Because if I don't know executive speak, the likelihood of me enrolling them is pretty low. And so could you maybe speak a little bit more about what you would advise other people? Like, how can other artists or other creatives and people in general just get better at enrolling other people?
Say listening has a lot to do with it. Being able to do a little bit of research or just being around the type of people that you have to interact with. So many years ago, as a designer, I would go sit next to the developers and just listen to them talk and like, what do they care about and what are they looking at? And, why do they think that way? So if you can, learning a little bit more about how the other people work and talk and communicate is super helpful. If you can't do that, just listen. Sort of a tired saying now, but trying to listen more than you talk is very helpful, because then you can hear how they're putting things, like what's their angle of attack, what's their tone, right, when they're describing things. What is it exactly that, and this is the other thing, when you talk about empathy, you have to be able to put yourself on the other side of the table. You have to know what people's motivations are, at least take a pretty good guess at why they're saying what they're saying or not saying. What is it that's important to them? Then once you have sort of formed this idea, then I think you can do a better job of trying to make that connection. Even if, there's lots of people I talk to who are incredible storytellers. I mean, just absolute another next level. Like I could never tell a story that great. But when I listen to them talk, I understand how they're going about, what they're doing. I may not be able to mimic it exactly, but I can try to use something that's similar enough that we can have a good conversation. There would be other times when somebody's going super deep technically and you're not comfortable, and you don't know all these acronyms and you don't even know what they're talking about, you have to be brave enough in that moment to say, excuse me, I'm sorry, I really don't know what blah, blah, blah meant. Could you please explain that to me? And just ask. Oftentimes people let things go thinking that they're going to look stupid, to somebody for asking that they don't know something. And the other funny thing, I say this all the time, young designers or people that are early in their career are some of the most valuable people in any company. And for some reason, they think nobody wants to listen to them because they're brand new and they don't know anything about the domain, or they're still learning their craft. And the truth is, everybody wants to know what they know, right? They're the fresh and young brains, right? Like they're the ones who have all these great ideas that are different from what everybody else has been saying. So I would say if you're a young designer, don't be afraid to speak up, to introduce yourself to people, to ask, to tell, whatever it takes to sort of get some kind of a relationship going.
Appreciate what you just said to the young people, because I agree. And I think part of a good mentor, manager, or boss is to help push those young people, to help them get their ideas across and help them communicate and teach them and show them they're not.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my experience has been everybody wants to hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
And you, as that young, early in career person, you have to be willing to share your thoughts, good or bad, right or wrong. It's okay to be wrong. There's always another time. There's another day. Like, don't worry about it.
In pulling the thread without going into my history, because you know how I like to babble, the best advice ever was someone told me, no, show your stuff. Like, stop hiding behind, you're never going to get anywhere unless you show it, unless you don't have fear of what it is.
Yeah. One of my old design managers said to me once, don't ever show anything that's not perfect, which is probably something they learned in art school.
Horrible.
That is a horrible.
It's the worst thing ever to say to somebody. Sorry.
I mean,
nothing's ever perfect.
Yeah, I'm sure for both of you, like me, the most interesting part of something is not the finished piece, but it's all the mistakes and the outtakes and the process of getting there is super interesting.
I love all of what you're sharing, Mike, and I think there is something to be said about how our society overall, as a system, really gives us the different message. Right? Is that like you said, don't show it until it's perfect. There's a lot of company cultures out there that are less healthy, which promote only finished product. There's a lot of toxic behaviors that exist in a lot of different workforces or different industries. I kind of want to take a step back a little bit. As you were coming up, before you had the ability to lead others towards this better future, well, one, did you ever have spaces where you were having to navigate these people? And if so, how did you get through those difficult environments or difficult situations?
Well, as you said, it's difficult. It takes a sense of maturity, even if you're young, to be able to, first of all, not get upset, not talk back or be defensive, all of those very human things when someone attacks your creativity, right? Or doesn't recognize your brilliance, right? Like this happens to all of us. With time, the more that you work at your whatever it is that you do, I think you start to learn that some people are just not ever going to like what you do. So, or some people are not going to understand what you do. And you have to have enough confidence in yourself to know that something is good or bad. Like we all sort of know, right? Like as creatives, you kind of know when something is good and when something's not good, or you could have done better, or, there's so many days that I've driven home after work and thought to myself, wow, if I had just spent 5 more minutes on that thing, it would have been so much better. But like many other people, I had to create a lot of things in a very short amount of time. So nothing gets to be perfect anymore. You do your best for the amount of time you have and you move on. That is the modern world, right? Like it didn't used to be that way. And there's some people who can maybe enjoy not having to work that way. But for the vast majority of us, it's next, right? It's like, get the project, figure it out, get it done, turn it in, move on. And there has to be a level of maturity in there where you say, you know what, I know it's not going to be the best I could possibly do, but it was the best I could do for that amount of time. given whatever it was I was trying to do. And you have to be, as a creative, you have to be okay with that. You can't come back and like double think, or like question yourself. Like, of course it could have been better. Everything can be better if you spent more time on it. That's not the point. The other thing that I've run into that's been a very difficult thing, and again, this sort of goes back to your level of maturity, is when something isn't right, but everybody is invested in it and you're doing it and you're trying to get it done and you're like, you have a deadline and it has got to be done. It shows the most maturity to say, hold on, this is really not good. We really shouldn't do this. We shouldn't ship this. We shouldn't finish this, or whatever it is. At Microsoft, we would call it like killing your own feature. That takes an incredible amount of maturity to say, you know what? I know I've spent a bunch of time on this. I know the team is invested, but this is really not working out. And recognizing that that's the better thing to do. So for those difficult situations, there's no getting around the fact that it's hard and not everything's going to turn out the way you want. But I'm an optimist, and I would like to think that we always get opportunities to do better and learn from every experience, and off we go.
I really appreciate all of that. Thank you for sharing, Mike. I think beyond the maturity, which I totally agree, I think there's also a very real fear. Like, if I'm going to kill my own project, that means I don't get promoted. That means that mortgage is even that much harder to pay. That means my kids might have to take out student loans for university, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Do you have any tips on how to manage that fear? Because I think in organizations I've been lucky to be a part of, that's 100% recognized and even, encouraged to not just make something just because we could make it, but make sure that it's something that's moving the project or the brand or the community culture forward. But I know a lot of people that's not necessarily encouraged. How would you recommend people kind of find that courage to overcome those, I think, very real fears of being maybe not necessarily fired, but kept off the promotion track or siloed by themselves or isolated, and all of the other kind of petty things that managers can try to come up with to punish people?
There's never one size fits all, right, for these things. In general, I would say if you're afraid or if you're concerned for your job because you're about to bring something to light that you think is wrong, then that's a problem. It may be nothing you can fix by yourself, but it's something you just have to recognize. Okay, look, this is not a good environment. This might go south and I'm just going to have to deal with it, but I'm going to speak up. And if my manager or my team doesn't want to hear it, I've done this a million times. Like I'm very often the voice of, I'm not going to say reason, but just the voice of, well, I don't think this is right. I just sort of felt like it was more important to try to do the right thing. And ultimately, I have faith that the right thing would happen, meaning the company would get it right or the team would get it right. We would avoid disaster by not doing this. At least somebody tried. You just ship things or you finish things or you release things that you just know are either not good or wrong, then what does that say about you as a creative person? Yes, I get it. People have mortgages and they have bills and they got careers and I get it. But if you manage your career instead of trying to do the right thing, are you going to be happy about that?
My answer is no.
You've all been in this position where you're like going home, shaking your head, like, I can't believe they did that. I can't believe that got decided. I can't believe nobody agrees with me. And you know what? The sun goes down and the sun comes up and you try again. Yeah. I mean, some people are always like an irritant, fly in the ointment, like whatever kind of thing. And some people are, let's just do it. Yes. Hooray team. Let's go. I think creatives have a very hard time just going along with stuff because it's our job to look around, like to look across and look up and down. Like that's what we do, right? We don't just stick our heads in the sand and like just work on our little piece of something. It's our job to look at the whole thing, whether it's technology, business, ethics, morality. It's like, that's what creatives do. It's our role within a team, within a cross-disciplinary team, to bring that vision and that awareness to everybody else and go, hey, you know what? I know you think we should do whatever this is, but have you considered, but here's the other thing. telling somebody that something is wrong or bad or it could be better is fine, but that's not helpful. What's helpful is when you actually cite the rationale for why you're saying that and giving them some kind of a solution or some other path to at least consider. So I would say that has to go along with all this.
That's beautifully said, my friend. I want to shift gears on us because this conversation could go forever. Rick, I'm speaking of Rick, but this has been awesome. Your breadth in this company and your ability to talk to that MIT guy or the the artist, the storyteller like myself is just been fabulous. And one of them, going back to what your thread is, you're a very accomplished author. And when you write stuff, those people, me being a storyteller and artist, and the guys who graduated MIT at 18, like absorb your book and your knowledge. So the new one's called Visualization of Business. So I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to write this book and some info about it.
So Visualizing Business is the third book that I've written. That's really about what happens when you combine AI, data, visualization, and spatial computing in order to show how systems and processes and businesses actually work. 20 years ago, I was living in Silicon Valley, and I had always been around the game industry. Game engines have always been my palette, if you know what I mean, right? Like game engines are super awesome to do creative work with. I had all these amazing things at my disposal, but it always bugged me being such a visual person that when I would hear someone talk about models or processes or, like how things work, I automatically see them moving like in my mind. Like I see how information flows or how things like imagine we've all seen animations of a regular combustion engine, right? The pistons are going up and down and the spark plug's firing, and you sort of like get an idea for how even if you're not mechanical, you get an idea for how it works. So it always bugged me that we never looked at business in the same way. Why can't I see how my business works? We always look at static spreadsheets and charts and graphs that are frozen, slices of information in time, which are helpful. They've built gazillion-dollar companies, right? Like we've all used them successfully. But for the last 20 years, I've wanted to share this idea of how we should be able to see how things work in motion, the dynamics of markets, the way that things flow, or don't. And so this book, Visualizing Business, is really about that. I kind of paint the whole picture for people. This is the direction that we're going. This is why, I always joke I'm from the future. I basically show people what's going to happen and describe in detail what are all the factors that lead up to that. And it turns out that this particular book is right on time. And that's where Rafik Anadol, who wrote the foreword, who is now the hottest artist on the planet, and I share a very similar vision for how things can work. He works in the art world, I work in the business world, but I'm an artist, he's a business person. So we understand that it's two sides of the same coin. Using giant data sets and being able to visualize things that are invisible to most people is the thing that we share. And the part of the book that I love the best is his description of how we do share a lot of the same ethics concerns and morality, but also have that vision for how to help people see something that they need to see. So go to visualizingbusiness.com.
I was just going to say, like, where can we find the book? When is it? It's already out.
You can go to amazon.com and find it. Visualizingbusiness.com will take you right there. But it was a lot of fun to write this book because generally I will tell a future story, meaning I'm going to fast forward a little bit and show people how things are going to be. This one is a little bit closer to happening than my last book, The Age of Smart Information, which is sort of what's next after where we are right now with generative AI and ChatGPT. Essentially inverting the model so that data and information can tell their own story. We no longer have to figure out what it's trying to tell us. It just tells us.
But this goes back to earlier conversation too, of you being a good futurist, is you're ahead, and he is ahead of the game, and you just have to wait. You have to stay there and wait for the world to catch up to you. And it goes back to all this stuff you were saying, when you're young, you got to push. You got to be a voice. Don't wait for things to be perfect. And this book is making the book is a perfect example. You were just saying though that compared to 3 books, this one you feel is going to happen sooner.
Well, yeah. So the first book I wrote, Envisioning Holograms, was in 2017. So Microsoft HoloLens had just come out. Mixed reality was a new concept. We had been using virtual reality and AR things already for a while. I was part of the first metaverse, right, in the mid 90s when we had VRML. So I'd always been a 3D guy, but I've always also been that person who's been able to think spatially, right? So I just naturally, like both of you, I'm able to think in a dimensional way. Not everybody can do that, especially if you've been a mobile designer or a web page, flat 2D, UI, GUI sort of designer. Your brain just may not work that way naturally. So the first book, Envisioning Holograms, was sort of a textbook approach to how to start thinking more spatially. How would you imagine creating new experiences with holograms, with digital characters, and objects that are injected into the real world? So it was actually used as a textbook at RMIT in Australia, which is kind of fun.
Wow.
So that was great. It's like that was a good beginning for me. But the second book, The Age of Smart Information, it is pretty far from where we are now. And one thing I realized was I'm just going to tell everybody exactly what's going to happen, how we're going to get there, and wait, because I can't do it myself, right? It's going to take an industry, literally like the entire industry, to want to do this, to make it like, yes, you could do examples of it, but it's not going to happen overnight. So in the meantime, the better advice would be work on something that you can make possible right now. Like, yes, I like having vision and it's a lot of fun, but it doesn't get you anywhere except saying, see, I told you so, like someday in the future, right? But it doesn't help you today. And I would say the smarter thing to do, if you're a super talented, creative person with vision, is do something that people can appreciate and take advantage of right now.
I love that. I think that's a perfect piece of advice to wrap up our conversation with, because I think that's something actionable that every creative listening or watching can really take to heart, right? It's like, go make something right now that's going to impact people and something they can connect with, as opposed to maybe dream or kind of think of from a future lens. This conversation has been amazing, Mike. My mind is still processing all of the magic that you shared with us. Where can they find you? What's the best way for them to follow along your journey?
I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn, just Mike Pell. You can go to mike-pell.com or visualizingbusiness.com, and there'll be a link to go find me. I always tell people this. I love to talk to people. Nobody ever writes me. So if you want to chat, get in touch.
And I will defend him. He's a sweetheart, and he talks to me, so he's got to be a good person.
There you go. I just talk to you because you like bourbon. That's all. And you're a pretty damn good artist, gotta say.
And a little nutty helps too.
Yeah, we all are, right? That's why we're creatives.
That's why we're creatives.
Thank you, Mike, again. Any last words or anything you would want our listeners to know?
Especially if you're any type of creative person, you are the most important. Yes, there are engineers and technologists and politicians and every other kind of person, but creativity is really at the heart of humanity. Just think about that. It's the creative people that have propelled society forward, for ages, right? Forever. And so you're doing a really important thing. If you're a super gifted musician and you're just not getting the breaks, just know that you are doing something important, right? If you're an artist, a painter, a dancer, it doesn't matter, a writer, these are incredibly important things in society. I just look back at the history of humanity and just remember that you're part of all that.
I don't know about the world, but I needed that today. Thank you, Mike. Thanks, Mike. Thank you for everything you've done for the show today. Thank you for having the time to talk to us. And on a personal, thank you for everything you've done for me personally. So,
hey, Rick, thank you very much for having me on the show too.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure and an honor, and I can't wait to pick up your books. So thank you again.
I can't wait for you to pick up my books.
He'll know the names like Phil Lang, and Rick, you'll meet all these people. Phil Lang and Paul London, like the smartest people worldwide I know. Like, did you get his book? Like,
They're good. If I do say so myself, they're pretty good.
They are.
And honestly, the more important thing for me is that I wrote them to be conversational. I wrote them so that they feel like you and I are just talking about something.
A lot of tech books, I feel stupid. I don't feel stupid when I read yours. To your point, I feel like part of the conversation, right?
Yeah, and that's what we talked about earlier, is finding the right altitude to communicate with someone. So my approach was to try to write what I would call an airport book, right? Something that anybody walking through an airport might just pick up and read on a flight. They may not be technical, they may not be an artist, they may not even be a business person, but I would like to be able to explain things to them that they can understand.
Yeah.
Just need more people being more empathetic and writing at other people's level, more like you, Mike. So
You know what? You're right. There are more people that should buy my book. I completely agree.
Yes, there are.
All right. Hey, thank you both. I really appreciate this. Can't wait for this to come out and to have a conversation, because that's the more important part.
And we will
Thank you
drive
again,
people to
Mike.
have conversations with you.
All right.
Cheers.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining Rick and myself on another episode of Origins, A Creative Journey, a DesignerCon production. Please like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, download and listen to us every place you get your favorite podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Origins, A Creative Journey, all one word. Drop us an email for thoughts, ideas, or maybe somebody you'd like us to interview at deconpodcast@gmail.com. And make sure you join us in Las Vegas for DesignerCon, North America's premier annual design convention. All the information can be found, including tickets, at designercon.com. Till then, enjoy your own creative journey.